Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Image and Wire show. My name is Jake Fishman. I'm the host of the show and the editor of the Image and Wire newsletter. And we have a really special episode for you today. We have Anita, Vadria, and Terry Schemmel from Cleerly on with us. And this is like I said, this is truly a unique episode and it's a unique story. I can't wait to share it with you, but I'm going to keep it a secret for a couple minutes. Anita, Terry, welcome to the show. First of all, if you could share a little bit about yourselves, what you do at Cleerly, what your background is, and then we'll jump into it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jake. Again, my name is Anita Vadria. I am the Director of Medical Science Liaisons and Clinical Education here at Cleerly. I'm a physician assistant by training for the past 8 years, and I'm just really proud to be a part of the team here at Cleerly, who is really changing the way that we think about heart disease. We know heart disease is really the leading cause of death, and I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to work towards a solution for a very meaningful problem in our society.
And I'm Terry Schemmel. Thanks, Jake, for having us on. I'm the Director of Quality for Cleerly, and most of my job is making sure that we're compliant with FDA regulations and being certified to ISO standards. So that's my position. I've been in medical devices for 10 years, and I've been in industry for over 35. So that's me.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Anita. It's a pleasure to have you on with us. Anita, to start us off, maybe you could help us understand a little bit more about the Cleerly product and what it does, how it works.
Sure. So Cleerly is a digital healthcare company that's transforming the way physicians approach the treatment of heart disease. Our goal is to provide AI-enabled leading-edge technology through a comprehensive digital care pathway that, quite frankly, addresses the current limitations in cardiovascular care. Historically, as a field, we've evaluated patients through indirect surrogate markers of disease rather than the actual disease itself. So with the use of Cleerly, physicians now have the ability to precisely define and identify atherosclerosis, and from that, be able to individualize treatment based on a patient's actual disease.
And Terry, I'm just dying to bust open the surprise. So Terry, like I said, this is a unique story because you're not only one of the people making sure that this product is great, but also you're kind of a patient, and it changed your life in doing so. So maybe you can tell us a story about how that happened and how it worked out for you.
So yeah, we were sitting around at the happy hour after working one day in Denver, and one of the VPs says, "I know, let's all get scanned." And I was like, "Well, I'm in." so I thought, well, that'd be kind of cool. So we kind of scheduled a day and tried to make sure everybody went on the same day, and that didn't work out. But so I ended up going on a Friday and to get my scan, so you get the CCTA first, and then you run. Our product is an algorithm that you run after the scan. So you just take the DICOM image and run it through our software. So that analysis was performed on that Friday. And then I got a call early Saturday morning from the physician, and he said, "Hey, we need to have a Zoom call." I'm like, "A Zoom call?" Well, that means he needs to show me what's going on in the scan. And I was like, "Oh boy." So I called, but my wife and I were like, whatever comes of this scan, it's all going to be good news. We're either going to find something or we won't, but at least we'll know. So sure enough, I get on the call, and the physician goes through the scan, and through our software, here's a look at what it looks like. They found a 95% blockage in my LAD. And so I didn't have any way to know that I had any kind of heart disease. I have no family history of it. I didn't have any symptoms, and we can get into that later. But what I wanted to show here was our software allows us to, so here I'm looking at the left main and LAD. Here's a view that we use a lot. These are slices in different angles, but what I can do is scroll in on this, and you can see if I move my cursor here. If we're looking down, so here's my LAD in yellow. It's and then I'm looking down the axial view of the artery, and so you can see here I've got some non-calcified plaque. So in our view here, calcified plaque shows up as blue, and then we have this narrowing going on. And so if you look as I'm going down the artery, you can see that it just gets really narrow. And so diameter stenosis right there says 95%. And I was like, wow, that's really bad. So our CMO, I talked to him right afterwards, and he goes, you know, those your blood cells are lining up to get through that hole. so yeah, I had that diagnosis. 10 days later, I had a stent put in, and basically put a stent from this section to this section, and that's in good shape. So if I look at some of the other vessels that I have, here's my RCA, relatively clean. And so there's my PDA, my PLB, my D1, my the minor vessels are all pretty clean. So the one problem that I had, I wouldn't have been able to see this with any other kind of analysis. The analysis that you would get would, if you just have the DICOM image, it would look something like this, where you just have the gray, and you could see, oh yeah, you have some calcium and you have maybe a narrowing here. But the cool thing about our software is you can see exactly what's going on and where it is exactly. So I gave this input then to my physician, my cardiologist, who I didn't have one before. But anyway, so the whole idea was I now have a way to say, here's exactly what's in my heart. And as I've been telling my friends and relatives, everybody that I can talk to, hey man, you got to check this out. So it's a very unique way of looking at your heart, but it's also, it gives you that, we call it phenotyping, but it's where you can tell the density of the plaque. And so because we're able to see the different kinds of plaque, we can see that I was headed for a massive problem.
How amazing that this was able to I guess manifest and come into your life and potentially save your life. Anita, from a technology perspective, and then a technology into clinical perspective, what about the Cleerly software was able to identify this blockage?
Yeah, so at Cleerly, we believe that every patient, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic, is at a point where heart attacks can be prevented. And so to support this, Cleerly has developed a care pathway that starts with whole heart atherosclerosis, which is really the first step for disease assessment. And we do so by quantifying and characterizing the type of plaque in an individual's arteries. This becomes very important as the phenotype of certain plaques, such as low density non-calcified plaque, has been found to be the strongest predictor of a future heart attack. Next, we offer tools that really take this advanced imaging, and with those tools, we're able to translate it into actionable insight. So treating physicians and patients can actually understand the information that they're receiving from this advanced imaging. And then Cleerly has also joined forces with the American College of Cardiology to really emphasize effective treatment based off of a patient's actual disease, rather than surrogates of disease or guideline-directed medical therapy. And then lastly, Cleerly now has the ability to disease track. In any other disease process, whether it's cancer or chronic kidney disease or asthma, there are parameters in place for staging, and that becomes important for prognosis of a patient, but then also the management of a patient. So, with Cleerly's ability to disease track, we have the ability to prove therapeutic success, or in the case of therapeutic failure, guide intensification of medical therapy or lifestyle interventions to really, at the end of the day, halt the progression of plaque. And so I think that's the beauty of this paradigm, is that this is personalized medicine, this is precision medicine, rather than population-based.
For the population, or the people who are out there who are in a similar or maybe a different degree, but similar in that they are asymptomatic as Terry, like how many people are we talking about that also have 0 CAC scores?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jake. So, as a calcium score of 0 is not a clean bill of health. And that's due to its inability to detect and quantify non-calcified plaque features, lumen stenosis. And so when you look at the data from large population-based studies, what you see is that about 20 to 35% of patients who have a heart attack will have a 0 calcium score at the time of their event. So, and the reason for that is that calcified plaque is the wrong plaque to look at. It's really the most benign form of plaque. It's the non-calcified plaque, specifically the low density non-calcified plaque. That is the plaque that puts patients at risk, and a calcium score doesn't have the ability to detect that. And I think, Jake, what we've realized over the years is that not all plaque is the same. All plaques look and behave very differently. And so from our research here at Cleerly, along with multiple large clinical trials, they've demonstrated that the strongest predictor for a future heart attack is the presence and the volume of low density non-calcified plaque. It's really the form of plaque that is the most unstable form of plaque. So now that we have the ability to quantify and characterize plaque with Cleerly, it gives physicians the opportunity to be able to diagnose and treat a patient based off of their actual disease.
So if they don't have Cleerly, or if this was from a couple years ago, how are they identifying these patients?
Yeah, so the historical approach to heart disease misses far too many patients who are at risk. About half of the patients who have a heart attack don't show any symptoms, just as Terry had mentioned, symptoms such as shortness of breath or chest pain. And about 70% of individuals who show up, with their first heart attack are considered low risk based off of traditional risk factor measurements, such as the ASCVD risk scoring calculator that include markers such as cholesterol or BMI. And so we know that risk factors of disease are not the ideal biomarkers when it comes to identifying those at risk. It's great for population comparisons, but not so much for individualized risk assessment. And so now, we have the ability to actually quantify and characterize this plaque that, actually gives physicians the insight to understand a patient's true risk and then be able to intervene appropriately. I think another problem is that, with the current standard of care, many patients are referred for invasive procedures to the cath lab. And a lot of times those procedures are really unnecessary. About 68% of cath lab referrals are unnecessary. So, 2 in 3 patients who end up going for an invasive procedure, such as an invasive coronary angiography, don't actually need them. So I think, with these different, with all the things that I just mentioned, I think, we're working to drive awareness and adoption for this approach that, quite frankly, will really change the way that we look at cardiovascular disease.
And Terry, you mentioned earlier that you had the stent put in, and I'm curious, maybe you could share a little bit more about your treatment and what you're doing since then in terms of just management, and then the role that Cleerly played in that treatment.
Yeah, I must say, so I had no symptoms. I have no family history. I check my cholesterol levels, my triglyceride levels. I do everything. I try to make sure I'm in the right zone for all of that. All my life, I've never had any kind of risk thing pop up that says, wow, your cholesterol's high or anything like that. I've never had that. And so I never believed there would be anything wrong with my heart. I didn't think I had CAD in any way. And so I never had shortness of breath. And let me tell you, every cardiologist, I saw 5 cardiologists in a month. And so when every one of them asked me, you didn't have any shortness of breath? I was like, no. And so, of course, when you look back, you can say, well, I used to swim every day and I'd swim to the end of the pool and I'd have to take a breath and, before I turned around and went back. And so looking back on it, yeah, I guess I wasn't breathing all that great, but I just thought it was because I was a crappy swimmer. I taught myself on YouTube. So I thought, maybe that's just how it is. Well, so since then, of course, you look back and okay, now I can swim the length of the pool and turn around and come back and not have any issues. So I still swim every day, but the rest of my heart arteries are pretty clear. And then what they did right away was they put me on a statin, a beta blocker, and an anticoagulant for the stent. I can go off of the anticoagulant after a year, and I'll be rescanned in a year. And I can't wait to get that scan. It's coming up next month. But yeah, I want to see. Of course, you can't see through a stent, but I want to see what the rest of my arteries are doing. And being relatively clear, I'm pretty happy with my protocol. I did change my diet and exercise routine. I really have been religious now about exercising, and my diet has changed quite a bit. Several of the physicians have said, you need to be plant-based, and so I think I've gone over to maybe 50% plant-based, but there's nothing like a big good steak. So I have made changes in my life, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm really relieved that I found this, and so I've recommended it to my friends. I have one friend who has a really high incidence of heart disease in her family, and so she's like, I'm dying to get this done. She had it done, and they didn't find anything, and she goes, I am so relieved, because all my life I've had this hanging over my head, and I didn't know a way to. I've always looked at my numbers and they were always okay, but I didn't have a way to look inside my heart, and now I do. So that's been really the eye-opening piece for me is, yeah, I changed my diet and exercise, and I've got a protocol now for my CAD. But boy, just to be able to have people that have no symptoms be able to go, oh, okay, I'm okay.
Well, make sure not to tell your cardiologist about your 50% plant-based compromise.
Yeah.
So Anita, for understand that Terry's one case, but there's a broad range of cases. How is Cleerly used on the kind of treatment planning and monitoring, effectiveness monitoring steps?
Yeah, so we've developed this care pathway to be able to standardize the highest quality of personalized care. So with Cleerly's ability to not only identify, define, and track heart disease, there's an opportunity to intervene on those patients who may be at risk, and to be able to individualize their treatment based off of their actual disease. Yeah. So whether it's initiating a statin or a PCSK9 inhibitor or increasing physical activity, all which have been shown in clinical trials to convert the riskiest soft plaques to the more stable calcified plaques, and ultimately lower a patient's risk of having a downstream cardiovascular event such as a heart attack. And if therapeutic success is not achieved, then to help guide the intensification of medications or lifestyle interventions to really halt the progression of disease. So I think, therapeutic success is really twofold. It's we want to stop the progression of disease. So if a patient has 100 cubic millimeters of plaque, we want it to stay 100 cubic millimeters of plaque. And then the second part to that is that we want to be able to transform the plaque or stabilize the plaque, if you will. So take it from the soft plaque and convert it to the calcified plaque. So I think what we're doing is, it's being able to provide physicians with actionable clinical insight that will ultimately save lives.
Right. So for those clinicians, the ones that maybe are just finding out about Cleerly through this video right now, or because one of Terry's cardiologists told them about it or something like that. And they, assuming that they do want to catch more patients who are walking around asymptomatic, or maybe think they have a clean bill of health because they have 0 CAC scores, how can they adopt Cleerly? How can they bring it in? What's that process?
Sure. So a Cleerly analysis is performed on a coronary CTA. So a healthcare provider would order a CCTA, and then the patient would be sent to a Cleerly enabled CCTA imaging facility. The CCTA images would be uploaded to the Cleerly cloud for the actual analysis. And then the analysis is sent back to the physician in roughly about an hour. And so there are a total of 4 outputs that the physician will receive as part of the Cleerly exam. There's 2 softwares and there's 2 reports. There's a provider report that includes all of the findings from the analysis. And then there's a patient report that the physician has access to that he or she can share with their patient. Cleerly felt that it was really important to be able to somehow transform all of this useful medical insight into a language that patients can actually understand. What we do in medicine historically is that we give patients reports that are filled with all this terminology that they don't really know what to do with, and they don't quite frankly don't understand what value it brings. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to help physicians be able to empower their patients with a greater understanding of their disease process, and to ultimately help improve health literacy. So with that being said, we know that if a patient understands their disease, they'll be more likely to be adherent to medical therapy and choose to live a more healthy lifestyle.
Right. And Terry, based on what you said, how you described your I guess your own disease state, which you officially know more about cardiology than me at this point, and the experience that your friend who got the clean bill of health and therefore understands her disease state, it feels like that this goal is achieved, right? This is
Oh yeah, it makes me feel, and plus I know that I can go back in a year, and then our software also has a compare feature, so you can look at last year and look at this year, and you can see, oh, it's getting worse. Oh, the statin really did work, and it's getting better. So having that ability is really reassuring too.
absolutely. I don't know how much deeper we can go into this. I find this to be just such an amazing story and so special. And Terry, congratulations on catching this and all these things that you're able to do because of it, and at least know how to take care of yourself given the situation. And Anita, congratulations to you and your team for putting a service together like this. So thank you, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Jake. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
thanks for letting me tell my story.
Excellent story. I can't wait to hear more about it next time. For the folks who are viewing us today, and you're among that group who you're responsible for your patients' cardiovascular health, but maybe don't know about how to make sure that you're properly tracking the folks who might be asymptomatic or even have 0 CAC scores. Check Cleerly out, reach out to Anita and her team, and see if this is something that you can bring into your own workflows. And also just thanks for joining us today. So Anita, Terry, thank you very much. Great job. Thank you for coming in, and for the folks watching, have a great day.